All right, it is right at 2 o'clock. And again, I want to thank everyone. We want to thank everyone for joining us on National Census Day for our Black Children Count 2020 Census webinar. We know there are a lot of different webinars and events and meetings going on at this time of day. So we thank you guys for choosing us, for choosing our Black children this morning. And we want to go ahead and get started. So I'm Bisa, Black Child Development Institute president. We also have Cemeré James on. She's Vice President of Policy with National Office, National Black Child Development Institute in the DC area. We also have Mr. Ed Reed, who's Program Director at Fair Count. So we're so thankful to have our partners on, and we are ready to rock and roll. So just a few housekeeping items. I mentioned when I first got on that Zoom has been, well, a lot of online programs have been having issues because everyone is on now. So students are in school, people are working remotely. So at this time, it's a high point of the day. So some people maybe have been experiencing some pausing. So, you know, just see your internet might go in and out. That's been happening on different types of software. We hope it doesn't happen to us today, but I want to let you know that it's something that's unfortunately commonly going on right now. So we're going to move on and hope we go well either way, but if not, we'll work through it. So just a few housekeeping items about your controls. So everyone was muted once we signed on, but when we get to the end, we'll have Q&A. And you can unmute yourself at that time if you want to answer any questions or ask any questions, that is. In the meantime, we'll use the chat. If you can't see the chat on your toolbar, it has 3 dots that say more under it. So there are 3 dots, it says more. And if you hover over those 3 dots, you'll see chat pop up. And so if you can type any questions or comments you have in the chat, that would be great. And we'll be monitoring the chat as we go. And our plan is to answer questions at the end, but if there's something that we're talking about that you feel is relevant at that point, feel free to ask. Also, if everyone would just say good afternoon, so you can let us know that you see your chat, okay? So again, over to the right end of your toolbar, you will see 3 dots. And it has more, the word M-O-R-E under it. If you hover over that, you'll see chat on the drop-down menu. And so just say good afternoon so we can know you see the chat. Oh, good, someone's already in there. Great, great, great. And then we'll be monitoring that as we go. So if you're on your computer, you can click raise hand as well. If you have a question or comment. I think to me, it flows better if you just put it in the chat, because that way we can monitor it and decide, you know, when is the best time to answer your questions. So, but the raise hand feature is there on your computer. If you're on your phone, it's *9. Also for your computer, I just mentioned the chat, so questions and comments there. Thanks for everyone who's already in the chat saying good afternoon. At the bottom of the screen, if you're on your phone, you may or may not be able to see your screen. You should be able to, though, if you're on your phone, the screen still shows. You can mute and unmute using *6. So everyone is muted right now, but as we're doing Q&A, you can unmute yourself with *6 if you're on your phone. If you are not on your phone, you just simply hover over your name and then you'll see unmute popping up in blue. So those are just a few housekeeping items to navigate us through the session. So our agenda today, we want to make sure we have a solutions-based, solutions-oriented webinar today. Not sure about you, but I've been on a lot of different ones. And at this point, April 1st, National Census Day, many people are aware of what the census is. But we want to go a little bit deeper today and make sure you have some resources to go out there and share with families and do the different work that many of us are doing out there, especially today, Black families and children, because we have some, you know, different types of issues that we experience in our communities, and we want to make sure that we are in front of those and offering support. So after we introduce everyone and share their organizations, we will dive into census facts and challenges, especially for the Black community. And then most of our workshop today, our session, our webinar is focused on resources. We want to offer some best practices with Black families when it comes to the census, so that you guys can have some tools that you can use in the community and as you're helping your family members, friends, people you know, understand the census and why it's important to complete it, and then moving from understanding to actually action and complete the census questionnaire. So we have Ms. Cemeré James on today, Vice President of Policy at NBCDI, National Black Child Development Institute. And NBCDI was founded in 1970 by Ms. Evelyn K. Moore. This is the 50th year anniversary, so we're excited about the 50th anniversary conference that's coming up, historical conference coming up later on this year. You can go on the NBCDI.org site to learn more about that. But the goal of NBCDI is to make sure that we are engaging leaders, policymakers, professionals, and parents around critical and timely issues that directly impact Black families and children. With the support of the organization's volunteer-driven national network, affiliate network, that includes affiliates around the nation, so including BCDI-Atlanta, we're one of the affiliates. The organization is committed to its mission and vision to improve and advance the quality of life for Black children and their families through education and advocacy. So thank you, Cemeré, for joining us this morning. Say hello this afternoon. She may have muted herself. So I'm Bisa Lewis, President of Black Child Development Institute Atlanta affiliate. Again, we're part of the National Affiliate Network. We're one of the affiliates, and we focus on actually the entire state of Georgia. Our organization was founded in 1981, and we support the focus areas of the National Black Child Development Institute. So if you look at the top of the screen, you will see those 6 focus areas: early care and education, family engagement, literacy, health and wellness, public policy, and child welfare. So we pull what NBCDI focuses on nationally. We make sure that those pieces are in place here in Georgia, and we support Black children and families to make sure that we are improving the qualities of their lives here in Georgia. We also have Mr. Ed Reed on from Fair Count. He's program director. Say hello, Ed.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. So Fair Count is dedicated to partnering with hard to count communities, and you'll learn about that term and why there's a kind of love-hate relationship with the term. But the goal is to achieve a fair and accurate count of all people in Georgia and the nation through the census, the 2020 census. And so the goal here is also to strengthen the pathways to greater civic participation. And all of us are 501c3 organizations, so we're so happy to be partners. And when Ed gets to his turn to speak, he'll share with you who his founder is. I'm sure you guys will know her name, Stacey Abrams, and more information about what they do and all the amazing resources that they have. Because of Fair Count, we're able to do much of the work for the census that we are doing. So thank you guys for being such a great partner, Ed, and Fair Count. So what is Black Children Count? BCDI-Atlanta decided to launch Black Children Count as a complete count committee. You know, there are a number of different types of complete count committees. And we wanted to focus on Black children because that's naturally what we do in our organization. So that's the name of our complete count committee, Black Children Count. So the goal is for Black Children Count to make sure that we're focusing on migrants and minorities and their children, because the census unfortunately does describe them, identify migrants and minorities as hard to count populations. And the reason why young children are considered hard to count is potentially because they have complex family relationships. Sometimes the child stays with dad, grandmother, part-time, full-time, it just varies. And they're not sure who should count the child, so no one counts the child. So mostly the young children, especially ages birth to 5, have often get left off the census questionnaire. And then migrants and minorities, there are different reasons, but there's a fear of legal aspects. For instance, people think they'll be deported if they complete the census. Some of them are just unfamiliar with the benefits of it. They don't understand that money is placed in communities based on the counts. And then there's a language barrier. So you'll learn from our webinar today that there are different resources to support all of these, I hate to call them myths, but fake news. So we're excited to be on to share with you those different, the information today. So our goal for Black Children Count, the Complete Count Committee, is to increase the number of migrants and minorities who participate in the 2020 census and include their children in the household count. So we don't want them just completing it. We want them to remember who should count the child. And if you're not sure, count them anyway. So we're happy. We can't do anything without partners. So you do more when you have partners. So you see we have the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus on there. So we work with our legislators, their count, Fathers Incorporated, United Way of Greater Atlanta, Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. They give us funding along with United Way. We have the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and that's through our relationship with NBCDI. So we're so excited to have these partners. And because we have these partners, we can do so much more in our communities. So let's talk about census facts and challenges. So Ed, take it away.
Thank you so much, Bisa. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Obviously, we didn't expect for a global pandemic to happen right at the onset of the issuance of the census questionnaires. And so things have changed and are steadily changing as it relates to the census timeline. So just wanted to kind of briefly go over that and what it means for the entire process. But we know that the questionnaires started to go out via the mail, the invitations to the mail to complete it online as well. That process started on March 12th. By March 20th, most households across the country had received some type of invitation to either go online or they received that paper questionnaire. And so we know that there are, of course, 3 ways to complete it, and that's online, by phone, and by mail. But the self-response period, which is the period that we're in right now, that period has been extended to August 14th. So the original date was July 31st. So there's an additional 2 weeks. Obviously, we don't want people to wait until August. We want folks to be proactive, get counted now, and get it out of the way. But there's also a process called update and leave. And that's what's supposed to be the hand delivery of census packets to roughly 6.2 million households across the country. And that's to primarily rural households or remote households. And that process has been suspended by the Census Bureau. Initially, it was suspended until today, but earlier this week, it was actually suspended until April 15th at the earliest, and they're still trying to figure out how they might be able to push forward with that. And I bring that up because it's really important for Georgia. Georgia, of course, has a lot of rural areas, particularly in middle and South Georgia, Southwest and Southeast. And there are a lot of pockets of communities that right now have not received any questionnaire or any invitation. And so we're seeing that in terms of the response rates in those parts of the state. And so, at Fair Count, we're figuring out ways that we can reach them to let them know that, hey, you don't need to wait until the questionnaire comes in the mail. You can actually proactively go online to do it, or you can call in a toll-free number to do it as well. But in addition to that, the non-response follow-up period, which is what we know as the door-to-door knocking or the enumeration period, that process has been delayed until the end of May. And we, that there's possible that could be delayed further as we kind of see what unfolds with COVID-19. And that process will also continue through August 14th. So through the summer. We, are really pushing folks to be proactive in this process and letting folks know that, because of the pandemic, that doesn't stop the census. We're mandated to do the census every 10 years by the Constitution. So we can't stop the work, and the outreach that we're doing is more important now than ever to ensure that we're reaching the communities that we need to reach. So I talked a little bit about the self-response rates, and just want to give a kind of an update on where we are in Georgia. But as of today, the self-response rate is at 34.1%. The national rate is at about 36.2%. So we're trailing just behind there. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with COVID-19. Georgia is one of the hardest hit states as it relates to the pandemic. And then there are also quite a few rural, remote households in Georgia that have yet to receive any type of communication from the Census Bureau at this point. So we do feel that number will increase as time progresses. But again, that just emphasizes the work that organizations like BCDI, Fair Count, and other groups that are doing to ensure that people are counted. It's interesting because, just over 27% of that number of folks have actually completed it online. And that seems to be the more popular option at this point. And just for a benchmark, in 2010, the entire process of the self-response period, Georgia had a rate of 62%. And so there was no internet option in 2010. So we're confident that we'll be able to exceed that 62% of self-response in 2020.
Thank you, Ed. So Cemeré will talk with us about some strategies. Yes, hi, Cemeré.
Hi, good afternoon. As Bisa already introduced me, I'm Vice President of Policy at the National Black Child Development Institute. Happy to talk about strategies to reach Black children. So just starting off with why this is so important. In 2020, $675 billion in federal funding is available based on the census count. This funding supports our health, education, housing, and other vital services, which we see are even more vital in this time of a global pandemic. Based on, these are estimates from the Urban Institute that were taken again before the current crisis around the world, but the threat of undercount for Black residents is 1.7 million people, which represents $1,600 a year over 10 years. So if you think about $1,600 a year times 10 years times 1.7 million people, we're definitely well into billions of dollars that we lose from our communities when we are not ensuring 100% count. The biggest challenge we have right now is that we are actually losing ground instead of gaining ground when it comes to counting Black children. And this is why we appreciate the leadership of BCDI-Atlanta in really pushing forward this issue, that between 1990 and 2010, we saw that Black children are undercounted at twice the rate of other children. And then we saw, again, that same undercount as well in 2010. Just to make this very real, very tangible for folks, the types of programs that lose funding are the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, our food assistance, formerly food stamps, temporary assistance for neediest families, cash assistance, national school lunch programs, Title I. Many of our schools receive vital resources through Title I, Head Start programs, and then child care assistance in Georgia, that's the CAPS program. So again, these are the types of programs that our families rely on a daily basis, especially families with young children. So what specifically is going on, what's happening, why children 0 to 5 aren't being counted or are being counted at the lowest rate. So families just not knowing that they should count young children. A child, born today, born on April 4th, 2020, does that family count that child on their census? We are begging them to. Children who have 2 residences, their parents are living apart. One parent is completely confident that the other parent is counting them. Children living with grandparents are thinking it's more appropriate that they're counted with their parents, that they think that may make a difference in some way. And the goal, again, is for that family to be counted. Young children not related to primary household. We know that families with young children, their children are young, they're usually young in their lives. They're usually more unstable times for them in their finances. And so they may be living with family, and those family members aren't thinking, I need to count the multiple families that are living under this household. Being in temporary housing, if they're living in a shelter, if they're in a homeless situation, making sure that those families, there's some outreach, some engagement that lets them know how important it is for them to still be counted. And again, the COVID-19 pandemic makes that situation, those situations and outreach to homeless families even more complicated right now. And then again, children living in multiple situations, whether with family members or not with family members, and the adults, the multiple adults that child is in care with, not ensuring that they're counting those children. And so right now, again, we have to talk about everything in context of the virus. As Ed already mentioned, we had 50 million people who have already responded to the census nationwide. And so we are in a good place, but we have to keep that going. We have to keep the momentum going. We can't allow seeing the deadline stretched out to August make us feel like, oh, we have time. We have to ensure that we use every day, because we're seeing how important it is to have health care, to have education, to have housing.
Thank you, Cemeré, so much. Great information about Black families and why we forget to count children. So we wanted to offer and spend the bulk of our time today on best practices with Black families, because there's a different way that we must communicate with them based on their fears. I mean, they have real fears, and we can't discount that they are afraid, and we can't say that, you know, it's wrong that they are afraid. They have some true Black and brown families, they have some true concerns, and we want to make sure that we are addressing them respectfully. So, Cemeré?
Thank you, Bisa. One of the top recommendations that we have is engaging in advocacy. We know that overall, the approaches to counting it within the census, those strategies are not designed to reach our families and our children. And so we have to ensure that we raise these issues. When you see some strategies that don't work in your community, when you're not seeing outreach, when you see ads, but you're not seeing ads about the census in your community, raise those to your legislators. There's so much we can do, but on the broader scale, we have to ensure that we're informing and changing the approach that folks are taking to counting. Again, with advocacy, getting involved as individuals, of course, is just as important as getting involved and educating your legislators. And so educating a diverse group of leaders, educating your faith leaders, educating your school principals, those around you. We like to ensure that people talk about the historical undercount. We have to ensure that we couch this within the history of our community, that we talk about this as a historical issue that goes back to our civil rights. I think is extremely important and will resonate with those who really understand that this is another way that our communities are being disenfranchised. Some recommendations for Get Out the Count. You can see, of course, that the first recommendation here is social media and virtual gatherings. There's so much that's happening right now that celebrities are using to raise money or just using to keep everyone's spirits up, that's happening online. Ensuring that if you're participating, that you're putting in a comment about the census. If you are attending church virtually right now, put in a comment as you're supporting praise and worship, put in a comment about the importance of the census. And then easing local doubts about privacy and confidentiality issues. There is a distrust of the government in our community, and there's a feeling that we don't want people knocking on our doors. We don't want these folks coming in intruding on our privacy. But that, to me, is an opportunity to encourage people to use the online option, encourage people to call in on the phone, just to say, hey, this will keep some of that traffic away from your door. Ensure that you are using the phone. For those who may not have a phone at home, may not have a computer at home, once it's safe to go out and visit your library to ask to use the phone to participate in the census, or your church, just ensuring that we're using the diverse resources from our communities to participate. And then I just mentioned the importance of access to technology. Again, just being really, really diverse, I guess, and innovative in the way that we think about it. I have ECE programs here first because many of our families consider their child care programs very much trusted. So asking to use the computer at your child care programs, in schools, in libraries, just encouraging as well schools, child care programs, and libraries to make that available, to put up signs about the census, to dedicate a particular computer in their computer lab and say, you know what, this computer is for people that are coming in to complete the census. That does something in people's minds like, oh, I want to get on this special computer and I want to participate in the census. Everything that we can do to incorporate the census into our everyday experiences, that's going to be what makes it natural for people to participate.
Thank you, Cemeré. I wanted to add to that with the libraries. In the time of COVID-19, the staff are still taking turns reporting to the office so they can social distance. However, the public libraries are leaving their Wi-Fi on so that if you go in their parking lot, you can still access the internet. So you may want to, if you can't put it out, go on their website and reach out to them to find out if they can do that, because that is a thing, and we're so excited that they're able to support our communities that way.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you. One of the ways that when we're talking to folks when they're out in the community, we ask them not to use the language hard to count. It's something that we use when we're talking to each other, but what we want to say is historically undercounted. As I mentioned before, the strategies used to count in the census are really designed to reach white middle-class families. It's really designed about what does the quote-unquote majority look like. And so those strategies haven't really been designed to reach us. And so we don't want folks to think that we embrace this idea that they're hard to count, that they're somewhere hiding. We know that we're out living our lives in our day-to-days, just as any other community. But it's really that we haven't yet advocated enough for our census to be responsive to our needs. And so we will continue to do that. But in the meantime, we don't want to use language that might alienate community members and make them feel like they're doing something wrong. And then other recommendations for outreach, again, really having in our minds the fact that families that are transient, families that are in unstable housing situations, many times they very likely have young children. And that's a sobering fact, but this is the case. And so ensuring that we remember those families when it comes to the census, that we're thinking about as we're advocating to our leaders and as we're volunteering to support the census, that we're thinking about what are the strategies we can use to reach people who are in unstable housing situations. And meeting Black families where they are. Black families very much trust their educators, they trust their child care providers, they trust early childhood educators. Those are the types of trusted relationships we want to ensure that we capitalize on by reaching out to centers and asking them to encourage the families in their centers to participate in the census, to put something up on their bulletin boards, to send a sheet home with their with the families that they're serving, send a sheet home with the children so that their parents are seeing and reading about the census. And finally, pediatricians. So we think about just two, again, very trusted folks that parents of young Black children are engaging with, educators and their pediatricians. Research shows that Black parents are actually more likely in some cases than other communities to ensure that their child is at all their pediatric appointments. That's a huge opportunity for pediatricians to have a phone available in their office, to have a tablet available in their office for people to participate in the census while they're waiting, in conversations to encourage it. I this week had a conversation with the DC, Washington, DC's chapter of American Pediatrics Association. So just ensuring that you're reaching out to your local chapter as well to ensure that pediatricians are aware these are people who have this built-in level of care for the health and the safety of our families and our communities. And so we know ensuring that they have information about the census can make a difference.
Thank you, Cemeré. All right, Ed has some, wants to share, will share on the approaches from Fair Count. Take it away, Ed.
Yeah, so, we have had to pivot quite a bit, and, a lot of what Cemeré has mentioned, we've been doing in coordination with BCDI and other partners across the state of Georgia, but also across the nation. And we've had to pivot pretty quickly to ensure that we are able to continue the outreach we're doing, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And so looking at some of what we have here on the screen, but we have a network of locally based and trained organizers. So the organizers that we have across the entire state of Georgia, they live, they work, they grew up in the areas in which they're working in these communities. We developed a digital and technology infrastructure. Early last year, we started this process. And so pivoting in terms of being digital and virtual, it took a little extra effort, but we already had that infrastructure in place. One of the things that we have been partnering with BCDI to do this as well is to install the internet in rural communities across Georgia. We know that roughly 20% of households in a 2016 study lacked adequate access to broadband or they had dial-up internet access. And so we wanted to provide up to 150 internet installations across the state before we had to really shut down our in-person interactions and delivery of these materials. We were up to 135. And you can go to our website at faircount.org. We have a map on the website of all of those locations. Some of them are still operational, and we've been issuing best practices for them to, obviously practice social distancing, but also following the CDC guidelines. But there are some that are, still being operational to ensure people are being counted in the 2020 census. We partner with complete count committees. Like Black Dads Count, Black Children Count. We have a complete count committee called Black Men Count at Fair Count, aimed at ensuring that Black men are counted. We know that roughly 67,000 Black men could go undercounted in the 2020 census. So we're figuring out creative and innovative ways about curbing those types of trends. We've also now looked to disseminating information through, our media outlets. So we have a very strong social media platform, and it's simple as sharing a tweet could help someone or remind someone that they need to complete the 2020 census. We also have radio ads. We're doing radio interviews, particularly in our minority communities. We have a TV ad that's been airing for several weeks now. And we're also doing some paid media in local and rural newspapers. We know people are at home right now, so they're tuned into the TV, they're tuned into the radio, they're definitely tuned into social media. And so we want to make sure that we have a captive audience as we're pushing this content out. And then lastly, we've been monitoring, of course, the self-response rates to see where we might need to deploy rapid response teams. Obviously, with the teleworking that we're doing now, a lot of what we're doing in terms of outreach is phone banking. And as we speak, our team is phone banking across the entire state, reminding people, to go online, to call in via the toll-free number, or to complete that questionnaire that might be sitting in their mailbox right now. And so that's one of the creative and innovative ways that we've had to pivot to ensure that we're still reaching communities.
Thank you.
So, we had a commit to count program, and you can see there our commit to count cards and pledge cards that we had. Folks could sign up and commit to count. We could stay engaged with them through email, through phone, through text. So we're not obviously doing, the physical cards right now, but we do have an electronic commit to count, card that we have on our website. And we've been really pushing that. Again, this is a way for us to continue to be engaged with folks. We do have text banking that we're doing and pushing text messages out to folks as well. This was a great way for us to push out the availability of the census jobs. There's over 500,000 census enumerator positions that were available and still are in some cases across the country. And so this is really a way for us to stay connected. Then those local partnerships that Bisa led with at the beginning of the presentation that we're so happy to have, and would not be able to do the work that we're doing now without those partnerships. And lastly, from a community and field standpoint, we have a dedicated group of what we call count captains, and they really are volunteers that live and work in their communities. We've been touching into them to see what they need, even amidst the COVID-19. We know that the census may not be the top priority for a lot of families right now. We're aware of that, but we want to figure out what the needs are and how we're able to help as an organization with those needs, how we're also able to show the impact of being counted in the census and what that means for, a global crises and the response that we have from national disasters and of this magnitude. We have a really big faith team and a really big faith department in which we've been really utilizing and leveraging our networks there to ensure that we're pushing out that content. We know that in most communities, the faith leaders are very trusted messengers and leaders, and people look to them for guidance, but also for information gathering. We have a faith-based app at FairCount, and you can go to our website to find out more about that. But this is a digital platform that allows leaders to manage membership, promote continued civic engagement within their faith community or their church, their mosque, their synagogue, what have you. They're able to work with us on this platform to ensure that they're still engaging their communities around the census, but other civic engagement tools as well. And this is a tool we actually had prior to COVID-19. But we found that churches are really signing up right now really fast because as they're not having service, they still need to manage membership. They need to communicate effectively. And so it's been really a really good tool and application to connect with congregations. We also have 2 faith toolkits on our website. We have one that is aimed just at the Black church. And so that you can download, and as well as another generic faith toolkit. And they have talking points, resources, and guidance for establishing faith-based outreach across Georgia, but also across the nation. And then our technology department, and I talked a little bit about the digital footprint that we have, and you can see a map there with some of the locations across the state kind of pinned on that map. And you can see the purple area of that map, purple and red are the most, of course we don't like the term, but the hardest to count, hardest to reach communities in Georgia. And you can see a lot of our internet installations kind of overlap those areas. And we are trying to ensure that we're reaching those communities as best as possible. And we've been outfitting them with Chromebooks, hotspots, and iPads in some cases, churches, daycares, Head Starts, community centers. We've been working with barbershops, beauty shops, beauty salons have been a real good hit for reaching people. And one of the things that Cemeré mentioned that I think is really important is that we must reach people where they are. Because oftentimes having something built around just a census program is often not enticing to the average person. And so we have a responsibility and role to our communities to ensure that we are, finding creative and innovative ways to reach people where they are. We also use a platform of digital tools online to ensure that we're, managing events, that we're recruiting those count captains, volunteers, and that we're pushing out content. One of the really cool partnerships that we have with Kids Doc on Wheels, which is a roving pediatric office, mobile unit, and they're providing a pediatric care across the state of Georgia. And so we're happy to partner with them to outfit their unit as well. We, right before COVID-19 really took a big hit here in the United States, we were in the midst of launching a statewide bus tour. We were only able to make about seven counties on our entire list. We had over 50 counties we were planning to hit, we plan to end that bus tour this weekend. So we obviously had to postpone, cancel the remaining stops, but we had 2 stops that we were going to partner with Kid Docs on Wheels across the state to ensure that kids had that pediatric care, but they also had outreach for the census. And so whereas we had to postpone that bus tour, we're hoping that we might be able to do something in the summer months during that non-response follow-up period to still get the word out across the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Ed. And so we love the work that NBCDI is doing, the support they're providing, the work with their count, the support they're providing. And because of their support, we're able to implement Black Children Count at the level that is going to work in our community and based on the needs and the challenges. So we have resources, and we actually have a new blackchildrencount.org website that we are launching, that is launched as of today. And so we are excited that this is available, and we are continuously adding more information, a toolkit. As Ed and Cemeré mentioned, there are certain statements that don't work well in our community. So we want to make sure that we're targeting them based on what they need and what works for them. So there are graphics on there that anyone can tweet, post. You can do phone calls, and people have phone banks, text messages, emails to have the appropriate statements to say that will work for Black families. One thing we've learned throughout these census partnerships and events for this past few months is that shaming people does not work. Shaming people, saying, well, people died, so that you could count, so that you could have the resources that you have, and here you are not exercising your right. We found research has found that doesn't really work in our communities. So we want to make positive statements to show them why they should count and what those funds, how it leads to money. People don't connect the census with money, but that's the number one reason why it's important to complete it. If you don't count in your community, then why is there money placed in your community? So it's important to show that you're there so you can get legislative seats. I believe Cemeré and Ed and I were talking recently, and in one place, there were 2 seats that were added for legislation because of the people in that community actually counted. The census allowed those 2 seats to be added. Well, in another community, 2 seats were taken away. So it's really important that we count so we can show what our needs are. So our toolkit, along with the resources that are provided by Fair Count, NBCDI, will encourage participation among Black families. So we're continuing to add an update, and we're launching, again, Black Children Count is actually on right now. So we're excited about that. We are doing virtual outreach at this point. Ed mentioned pivot. We're using pivot as a term now because everyone's having to pivot. We had this grand plan of going into childcare centers. Fair Count is providing us the technology to do so. In case people don't have the internet and computers, we're taking computers with us, Chromebooks, and showing them how to complete the form, why it's so important. Well, that fell through with COVID-19. So what we're doing instead is virtual outreach. So we've taken a map and we've divided the state of Georgia into different regions. And we have assigned complete count committee chairs, and Ed called them captains. So people kind of use those names interchangeably. They're having a committee to work in that area. And again, you're not going out to childcare centers now, but you're primarily contacting them and providing those supports, helping them to use it. So if you would like to serve in one of our, on our complete count committee to help us with this work, that would be so wonderful. Again, we're doing it across the entire state, and there's a form on our homepage at blackchildrencount.org. There's a census pledge, and on Ed's slide, you saw the census pledge card that Fair Count has that is so wonderful. With COVID-19, we've had to move to online. So we're doing online pledging where you can go in and show that you pledge to count children. And then once you've actually completed your census, you can click and say, we already counted. Or if you need more information, you can also say, we need more information because we don't understand the census or why it's important. Can someone please contact us? So offering those three options has been a way that we're reaching out to communities to support, since we are primarily staying at home at this point. So as we prepare for questions, we hope we provided some resources that are supportive to you, and we will send the slideshow PDF, so you'll have access to the links. We will send those out, the slideshow out to everyone who participated. We see there are a couple of questions in the chat, so we'll get to those in a bit. So I wanted to provide all the information for everyone. So Cemeré at NBCDI, here are all their contacts for social media as well as for email. And again, you'll have this in your email. My contact information is here as well in BCDI-Atlanta's. Anytime you're tweeting and posting, please make sure you add us there so we can see your tweets and your posts. And then Fair Count as well. So Fair Count is online on all social media. So when you go to their website, you can also see all their social media handles, and Twitter is where they're most active at Fair Count. So we want you to definitely stay connected with us because we're always adding resources. We're continuing to try to make sure we are meeting the needs of the community. And as we know the needs are there, we're partnering to ensure that we are adding even more resources that are going to support our communities. So just because we're at home and we're social distancing does not mean that the work does not continue. Families need us now more than ever. So let's see what questions we have in our chat. Ed and Cemeré, did you see one that you wanted to address?
Well, I did see, Ed here, did see one about digital platforms and kind of what's being used. And so it's a really good question. We are using, of course, all the traditional social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But TikTok has come up, and some of our organizers are using TikTok in terms of videos and trying to get information out. We had this really elaborate plan to do a lot of TikTok videos on the bus tour. And of course, we obviously had to change that. But we're actually looking into a way on doing like a virtual bus tour. And so we're coming up with some ideas on how we might be able to still reach these communities, these counties virtually and digitally. So that is certainly something that we're working with, and we're very active. In fact, today we have a campaign that we're doing on social media called Ask Stacy, hashtag Ask Stacy. And if you've been following us, you've probably been seeing it. We had a lot of celebrities, Keisha Knight Pullum, Ludacris, Kerry Washington, Cal Penn. They've all asked Stacy questions and posted videos on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And so I encourage you to continue to share that content to reach people, again, where they are.
Thank you, Ed, for that. TikTok is emerging a lot of fun videos out there, and that made me think of too the video challenge that just came out about if you go on the Census page, there's a Census challenge, and they're offering $10,000 to someone who makes a video. So you want to pay attention to that, and then the Census jobs. Ed, do you want to talk a little bit about the Census jobs while we continue to get questions in?
Sure. You know, I mentioned them kind of broadly earlier. And so it's 500,000 jobs that were available across the entire country. The Census Bureau is still right now hiring in a lot of cases. A lot of that process has been, suspended or halted right now. So there are a lot of lags and delays in the process and onboarding folks. And that's because, there are background checks and fingerprinting that has to take place. And obviously you can't do fingerprinting because of the in-person interaction right now. And then the processing centers are not able to work because of the social distance. So there are a lot of factors that are going into delays. So if you know people that have applied for a census job, tell them just to keep watching out for information from the Census Bureau. But, there are delays there. But these are really good paying jobs. They're temporary jobs, of course, but they're really all across the state and all across the nation. And we've been working hard to ensure that people are working within their own communities. And we feel like when the time comes for people to go knock on those doors, you're more likely to open the door to someone that you're familiar with or that you know. And so we really did a lot of efforts with days of action and faith communities, but also with the Census Bureau, partnering with them to ensure that people were able to apply for those jobs. The only way to apply for the census jobs is online, which is a hurdle. and a barrier for some. And so we, again, utilize those technology resources and infrastructure that we had to ensure that people had the availability to be able to go online to complete them. So you can still go to, 2020census.gov to find out more information about that and see where there may be a need in your community for jobs. I just want to caution you that that process is probably going to be lengthy and delayed just with everything else that's going on right now.
And they're making good money. So thank you, Ed, for that. So we want to, I unmuted everyone so that we can hear you. If you have yourself muted still, that's fine. But if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself, because I know some of you guys may have background noise. You have children at home, in school, all of that. So everyone is unmuted unless you have yourself muted. And you do have the capability to unmute yourself. So questions, anyone have questions or comments for any of our presenters today?
Hello, Bisa. This is Representative Stovall. Thank you for sending the information about the call, and we appreciate all the collaboration that you all are doing. And I got on the call a little bit late, and so you might have covered it, the question already. But what as elected officials can I share with my colleagues on what we could be doing to help push the BCDI's Black child count that you all are doing, even with the census being, the census day today?
Thank you, Representative Stovall. Thank you for joining. You guys, Representative Stovall has been so supportive of our work here in Atlanta, and which supports the entire state of Georgia. And Representative Stovall is also running for U.S. office, so we're excited about her work. And I tell you, right now, the biggest thing, Representative Stovall, that can be supported is the Complete Count Committee sign up. Because what will happen is the captains, the chairs will be contacting those people who have signed up for their region. And we're in each region of Georgia, we are targeting certain counties, especially the rural areas where people are not completing the census. And they can help us to reach out to child care centers in those areas to help them to reach out to their parents and colleagues and stakeholders. So that is the number one way that they can offer, they can get involved. And also making sure that retweeting, reposting, we post every day about the census. And also our colleagues on the call are doing as well, our partners. So retweeting, reposting, continue to send us those different webinars you guys are having, those different meetings you're having, so we can get those out. And in our pause, for Ed and Cemeré to chime in as well.
Yeah, I know. And so at Fair Count, obviously, we're happy to partner with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus and the work that we're doing there. And there's some creative ideas that are being floated out on, doing virtual town halls, so folks can reach their constituents and be able to continue to advocate and push out information. Also on Fair Count's website, we have a toolkit that's directed just at elected officials. And so we are adding language on, best practices and messaging for, reducing the in-person interactions, of course, right now. So you can download that toolkit there and it'll show you how to organize within your district as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ed.
And this is Cemeré. NBCDI also will be posting resources, specifically ones to be helpful, again, during this, during our current situation with the pandemic. We'll be posting resources both about the pandemic, but then also specifically about related to the census as well. And I echo Ed, when I say that everything that we can do virtually right now is important. Let's not wait until we're all back together in person again, but let's do everything that we can every day to continue to support our communities through this crisis and to also encourage everyone to participate in the census.
Thank you, Cemeré. And of course, Representative Stovall, we're always happy to come on into the town halls or, offer this webinar or do anything we need to do on what you already have going on. We'll be happy to participate and offer information to your to your folks who you guys are addressing, because you guys are doing a great job right now. Since you can't go down to the Capitol, you're still doing an amazing job with reaching out to the community, because I know you guys still have those phone calls every day, those conference calls and webinars. So thank you for that question. Any other questions that we need to address that are in the chat before we end our webinar? We want to make sure we're respectful of time, and we definitely want to end no later than 3. So let's see what's here. So Michelle Matthews, thank you for joining. She says, this may have been suggested, but many people live in apartment complexes. Are there suggestions in working with apartment and landlord managers? I believe, Cemeré, you want to mention what you were talking about regarding that piece?
Yes, so for those whose landlords are being flexible with them right now due to the pandemic, we also want to make sure that we're having conversations about the census as well. Some people will say, hey, I don't want someone coming in knocking on the doors right now. As much as we can say, well, can they leave information with the landlord? Can we leave something in the leasing office that people can pick up? Can we put information on the bulletin board? There's still a way to meet in the middle. There's still a way to have a conversation about the census instead of only thinking about how to be protective. Let's think about how to be protective and get the word out at the same time. So there's no reason not to think about safety, but there is a way for us to just be creative. Does that answer the question?
Well, we will add as well. Ed, you want to add anything to that about those who live in apartment complexes?
Yeah, no, I think that was good. Obviously, Cemeré had some really good points there. There are a ton of communities, obviously, that are loaded with apartment complexes. One of the things that's interesting is always how people receive their mail. Is always very interesting, and whether or not it's at your door, or do you have to go to a place where everyone goes to kind of get their mail in a mailbox, and being able to because sometimes, if there's a trash can there, people just throw what they perceive as junk mail right into the trash. And so sometimes the census questionnaire, the invitation, the reminders that will continue to come in the mail will oftentimes get thrown right out with everything else. And so, working with landlords is a good idea, maybe to post, outreach materials and signage around a complex to ensure that people know what's happening. That is certainly a good outreach tool that we've seen in some of our areas. But there's also problems in some cases with addresses being left off in terms of some apartment complexes, and that has to do with sort of the back end of the Census Bureau's process for how they allocate and how they mail the questionnaires to households. And so we want to make sure that people know that, and we've heard from people that live in households that say, well, I never got anything in the mail. And we know that they wouldn't be classified as those rural, those remote areas that would get the hand-delivered questionnaire. So we want to make sure that we tell them that, look, you don't have to wait until you get the questionnaire in the mail. You can actually go online. You don't really need that ID number on there to complete it. You can still do it by the phone. You can still do it online. The only thing you can't do is mail it in. So I think that's a really good pivot and transition to have with folks if they, indicate that they haven't received anything.
Yes, great. Thank you, Ed and Cemeré, for those answers. And so my2020census.gov is what we've been pushing you guys. So make sure you are sending people to my2020census.gov, because they can go online there regardless of whether they received it online or not, the mail card or not. So also play around with the Census Bureau website, because there are a lot of Q&As, FAQs on there that answer questions about who should be counted where. For instance, children who live in group quarters who are in college, but they're home right now because of COVID-19. So a lot of FAQs are there. And again, make sure you go to blackchildrencount.org, go to faircount.org, go to NBCDI.org. So thank you all for joining, for your time today. Thank you again, Ed and Cemeré. Have a great National Census Day.
Thank
Contact
you very
everyone
much.
you know and encourage them to complete the census. You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much, Bisa.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have a great day,
you.
guys.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.